Hi, Mr. Selig.
We are so excited today to be with author James B. Beard. He is the author of Walking Spirit in a Native Way, White Mox on the Red Road. And so, James, tell us about this book.
Well, hi, Stacy. Thank you for having me. Uh, the book, White Mox on the Red Road, uh, a little about it, but the first thing I always do when I start talking is I tell people who I am. And my name is Jim Beard, and I did write the book. My name in the language is No-Din, which means wind, which is in the language of the Ojibwe people, the indigenous people that I learned from. I'm from the Eastern Coast, which they would call the Eastern Door. My teacher is Larry Matris. Larry is an elder. He came from Lake Lena in Minnesota. And I walked with Larry for about 25 years to gain teachings and understanding of indigenous culture, spirituality, and stories. The book describes that 25 years walking with my teacher, my elder, as I would call him. And in the book, I call him Misho. Misho is short for Mishomis. Mishomis means in Ojibwe, grandfather. So he's the reason I wrote the book. This very quiet, gentle elder who was known amongst his people. When I first met him, I asked him some questions, and his answer was, I don't know anything. And I started walking for 25 years to learn what nothing that he knew really was. And as I walked, I learned I don't know anything either. And I began to learn because of the way he taught me. He didn't teach by sitting you down and saying, well, read this book, read that book, or listen to that movie, and that movie's like the Indians, or anything of that nature. He's told me stories, and they were called creation stories, stories of the people, stories of how the beginning came to be, stories about the first people on this earth. And as I learned from him, I learned by listening. You could never ask Larry a question because he would always answer it, I don't know. And then you would sit quietly and he would start to talk. And as he would talk, there would be a flow of information that was unbelievable. Over that 25 years, Larry continued to live in Minnesota, and I continued to live in the East Coast. So we didn't get to see each other every day. When he was here, he would visit with me. His son came out and lived with me for 3 years. His son, Brian Matris, is a medicine man of the people. And we traveled all over the country, going from reservation to reservation, community to community, trying to help people. In doing that, there were a lot of adventures. The stories Larry told me, the stories of creation, are not in this book. The experiences and stories that happened on the road with Larry and his son and many other elders, those stories are here because they describe a progression of understanding of how to be a part of community, how to love others, how to love oneself. My mantra is to be centered, is to stand alone together. first you have to learn how to be centered. And as you learn how to be centered, Stacy, then you begin to understand that you're part of a community, and that in being centered, you have to give out to that community continually and never ask for anything back. And when you do that, all of a sudden, everything starts to flow back to you. And you wind up looking at every day as a gift. That's what that mantra does for me. But to understand that mantra took years. When I first wrote the book, I thought I was writing it down for my kids. I have 4 children. And when I started to follow this kind of a teaching, this Native American teaching, this indigenous teaching, they kind of thought I went off the top end, you know? And I can understand that. Prior to that, I was a professional in the insurance business, and I had my own business going, and I had a good life. I had a good American life, decent income, all of that. And that was wonderful, but there was something missing. Now I'm an old man, but when I was your age, I started to look at life and say, you know, is this all there is? Show up at work, talk on the radio, sit down and write out applications for insurance policies, go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, go to different socials so that I can embellish my business and my social relationship in the community. Is that all there is? Isn't there some more connection? And I could not find that connection in the spiritual teachings that I had received growing up. I couldn't connect. I could understand what they were telling me, but I couldn't feel that oneness with a creator. And I always sensed that we were all connected, and that all of life is connected, and that I'm no more than this young dog over here. And that young dog is no more than me. And that it goes beyond just the other people in my community. It goes to all people in the world. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all related. It goes to all that is around us, the trees, the earth, the water, the air, the fire. All of that is connected. It's connected through spirit. And in growing up, I missed that. I sensed it, but I didn't know how to reach it. And when I started listening to my teacher, he walked a different kind of life. A really hard life, to be honest with you, but I won't go into that there. You might pick some of that up in the book. But his life, he walked it in spirit. And my life, I walked it in material. I had to have a house. I had to have all of the trimmings. I had to have lots and lots of money. They're just tired of hearing me talk. Anyhow, I had to have all of these things. And I was blessed. I had all of that, but I was still empty inside. Something was missing. And what I saw with him is that he would get up in the morning and he'd walk through the day, and whatever came at him, he would respond to it from a spiritual awareness concept, which is totally opposite of the way we live our lives in this society. And that is the strength that allowed the indigenous people here in this country, United States, Canada, Mexico, South America, that's what has allowed them to survive. That closeness of community and awareness of the spirit that moves between them and within them and around them. And I saw that. I thought, how can I have that? I had to learn to put the material things aside and walk a more spiritual, connected life and apply my daily walk to what material things would come up in front of me from a spiritual concept. That took years and years and years to understand. It's not something you go out onto the desert in the West and you sit down with an old elder and you learn it in 3 or 4 days sitting around a fire. It's something you sit around the fire with for years and years and years. And you begin to take it in as a part of yourself. In doing that, there were a lot of adventures. Adventures that seemed to only happen when I was traveling, searching this road. Adventures like traveling past a reservation where Larry's children lived, and one of his daughters calling her brother Brian while he was traveling with me and saying, "We're in trouble. We need you on the res." And Brian, he told me we were about 10 miles from the res, and it was only coincidence that we were there. We were traveling cross country. Brian tells me, pull off on a dirt road and go up this road. And I did. And we came to a yellow farmhouse and he got out. And the people there knew him and they greeted him. And he turned around to me and he says, "I want you to drive in on the res and help my sister. The welfare people are trying to take her son." And I looked at him like, "You got to be crazy." At the time I was in my 50s, now I'm over 100. And I'm not really over 100, but I said, "Why are you sending me in?" He says, "I can't go on the res right now." He says, "There's a warrant out for me on that reservation. I can't go there." I won't go into that, but I have to let my dog out.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah. He says he's had it.
Yeah. Hey, I love dogs, so I think he's adorable.
Yeah. To make the story short, I started driving in this long dirt road into the back way into the reservation. And as I drove in, a golden eagle flew out of the ditch up in front of my car. Because I had listened to my teacher, I understood the teachings of that animal. That is the warrior, the protector bird, the golden eagle. And he represents the veterans, the soldiers, the defenders of the people. And he flew up right in front of my car, and I'm sweating. I'm really thinking, what the heck am I doing? I'm a white guy from New Hampshire. I'm driving a car that's licensed from New Hampshire onto a reservation of people who I don't know, who don't want me there, to help two gals I barely know. I'd only met them once or twice. And I'm supposed to go in there and solve the problem of a sheriff and a welfare worker trying to take a child away from them. I thought, this is crazy. But then I saw that eagle. And that eagle reminded me I'm a veteran. And that I'm also considered by the people a veteran because of the work I do. I go to storytelling for indigenous and normal cultural people all over the country. And that eagle reminded me of who I was, who I am. And I wasn't sweating anymore. And I drove by the house and I saw the sheriff's car, welfare worker's car in the driveway, and I saw the sisters standing out on the porch talking to them. And they were claiming the boy had beaten up somebody at school and they were going to take him away from the family. He didn't go to school that day. There was no fight, but nobody knew that. I drove by the house and the sister, she waved at me that she recognized the car, she recognized me. And so I turned around and I came back and I pulled into the driveway just far enough to be off the road. And I got out of the car and I went around and I stood in front of the car. And the sheriff came out. He was native. And he looked at me and he says, "Who are you?" And I says, "I'm their brother." She said, "I know her family. You're not her brother." And I said, "Her father is my teacher, my elder. I'm adopted by this family. That's my sister you're talking to over there." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I said, "Nothing. I'm just going to stand here and wait until you leave. I'll watch." And he went back and he talked to the welfare girl. Suddenly, the two of them got in their cars and they left. And I went up. And the sister turned to me and she gave me the biggest hug and she said, "Thank God it was you that came." She said, "If Brian had come, there would have been a battle. But they didn't want to do anything in front of a white man about taking a child. They never came back." Wow. Those are the kind of things that happened on the road. And those stories are in here. But that's not what the book's really about. Those are just simply demonstrations of how this life changes you, how it makes you aware of what's going on around you, and changes how you approach the world that goes on around you. I based the book on 7 teachings. They're called the 7 grandfather teachings, the 7 gifts. They're wisdom, respect, humility, honesty, bravery, love, and truth. But those are just 7 words. So I led each of my chapters with those 7 teachings and an example of each one. And in the book, what I am hoping people will see is it demonstrates how to live by those 7 teachings. Those 7 teachings are not unfamiliar to the world. You'll find the same message in the 10 Commandments. You'll find it in the 12 orders of other religions all over the world. They're no different. We often relate and say, well, love is the greatest thing. Love is the first, it's the strongest. And it's part of it. But you have to understand the whole scope and you have to practice all of it together to make a good life. And what that does is it teaches you how to love yourself. Most of us, if I ask you, you'll say, "Oh yes, of course I love myself." But we all carry seeds. And when we get home and we're alone, we say, "Oh gee, I don't feel that great." You learn how to put the seed to the side. You don't forget it. You don't brush it away. It's a teaching. It's a lesson. You utilize it to help other people. And then they reinforce that love that you have for yourself. And the more that you love yourself, the more that you love the Creator and creation around you, the more you give, because that's what we have to do, is to give to one another. And we do that through those 7 gifts. He taught me to learn by the 4 cardinal directions. The indigenous people have teachings on each one of those points, and they all counterbalance one another. Thousands and thousands and thousands of teachings. I could only tell you 2 or 3 in all the years I've learned. But those teachings help you to keep that balance. It helps to keep you mindful how you live. Those are in this book. My story of how it is. Why is my story important? Because I'm not indigenous. I'm not an Indian. I'm a white guy from Europe. And though my family has been here many generations, from the indigenous standpoint, they still look at me as a new visitor. But as I've lived this life and I've visited with them, gone to their ceremonies, learned their language, done the work, they've invited me to sit at the fire. And they consider me one of them in many respects. The old crazy white guy that wants to know our secrets, you know. So it has a teaching of how to bring people together. It has a teaching that whether you're indigenous or you're Asian or you're African or you're European, we are all the same people. We all come from the Creator. And that is our teacher. Larry, I say he was a teacher because he was an elder. He was my elder. Larry was not just a teacher, he was a guide. The teachings are in the stories. The teachings are in the 4 cardinal directions. The teachings are in the 7 gifts. That's where the teachings exist. The reason they're not in the book, because they're not supposed to be written down. Simple. When I travel, I carry these books with me. Oh, I got my big book. I very seldom remember to mention to people I have the book with me, but if they happen to know me, they might ask. If I'm traveling and somebody wants my book, I give it to them. I don't charge them for it. If I go in a bookstore and do signings, yeah, this bookstore will sell it. But I don't sell my book. I give it away. I want everyone to have the gift that I received. I received a gift of a good life. I received a purpose that gives me new life every day. And I'm old now, but I'm healthy, I'm happy, and I do all kinds of things. I go to ceremonies up in Canada and out in Minnesota in the West. And today I've learned from hundreds of different elders. There are still teachers out there. The old ones, which Larry was one, most of them are gone now. And I've watched a lot of those elders walk on to the next world. But what they left continues their life. And I think of them every day. That's a little bit about the book. It's a little bit about me. I'm not sharing any great knowledge that I have in my mind and that I suddenly am such a wonderful wealth of information. I'm merely passing on the wealth of information of the Native people. I would say one more thing, if I might. If you, when you search out Native books, Animal Helper, different books, they'll tell you different little aspects, but you will not find any book that lays out Native American spirituality. They don't talk about it. They live it. And the only way to learn it from them is to go with them, walk with them on the path next to theirs, and live it too. And then you begin to understand. I don't know, Stacy, that's what I got.
That's amazing. So, I mean, you've covered all of my questions in an amazing, just an amazing presentation of your book there. And just it's amazing that you shared your journey, that you shared, you know, your purpose now, and that you're hoping that other people learn from this as well. So thank you so much for taking the time, you know, to talk to me today and to talk to our audience today. And this book is available, you know, online anywhere books are sold. And I hope you'll visit with us again and we can catch back up and see how things are going. And we'd love to have you back if you would come talk to us again. Um, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Stacy, it's my pleasure. I
Thank
would
you.
end by saying
Yeah.
Gigawabaman Minawa means we will see you again. There is no word for goodbye in Native language, but we will see you again.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we will see you again then. So,
Okay.
have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you.